A few news links. So this guy made an NFT. Now, a fungible token is like a dollar bill. You can trade it for any other dollar bill. That's what's fungible about it, and they're all equally good. And that's true of Bitcoins and Ether, for that matter. But a non-fungible token is a unique collector's item. So this guy made a tweet about his cat, and somebody said, "I'll pay you $50 for a non-fungible token of your tweet." So they take a screenshot of the tweet and they label it, and it is now a collector's item. People are getting excited about this. People are paying ridiculous amounts of money. The biggest one just sold. This sold for $69 million. A JPEG sold as a non-fungible token to go on the Ethereum blockchain. And, this one makes much more sense to me than most cryptocurrency activities because it's the same thing as any other original artwork or collectible item like a coin or a stamp or something. It's just an object which some people regard as worth collecting, and there is some kind of certificate of authenticity which gives it its value. And they're using the blockchain to make that certificate of authenticity. Now, you don't really need the blockchain to do that. We've been doing it for centuries with just testaments from experts and such, but anyway, they're doing it with the blockchain. And so it's these things are made, at least some of them are made by the same people that made the CryptoKitties, which I bought some of years ago. They made a little bit of sense as a use of the Ethereum blockchain. They were just the same thing, little collectible cats that you could sell or trade. All right, so this is very interesting. I expected, from what I heard, that the coronavirus would stop coming down and it would come back up because of the variants, but that has not happened. It hasn't happened in many countries. So apparently, we might really be getting to the end of this thing, and what this would mean is that the variants are not really that much more dangerous, or they're taking longer to roll out or something, but it's not just the United States. It's quite a few nations have shown. This is South Africa, where the variant came from, and it just doesn't seem to really matter. So, maybe we're really getting to the end of this thing. Yeah, and because it's a tweet, it can be reproduced. The same thing's true of painting. If you have a painting, somebody can take a photograph. Somebody can even get an artist to repaint it and make it very accurate. But there is still some special value associated with having the original, even though there are copies that are very good. That's the idea. So that's why I think it makes about as much sense as a baseball trading card or an original comic book in a plastic bag. It's just a collectible. And I guess, and the only point of the blockchain is to make the certificate of authenticity. So in that respect, I suppose it's a relatively sensible investment. And I've heard people say art is in fact a very good investment. So of course it can go out of fashion and the art price can go down, but that doesn't seem to happen all that often. Anyway, so Ron DeSantis, in Florida, the vaccine rollout was very strange. It was supposed to be like a random system, but in fact, the areas that contained rich Republican donors got the vaccine first. And now they have found texts where that's exactly what DeSantis did. He used his influence, the governor of Florida, to redirect early vaccine doses to his friends and his donors, and then lied about it in public. Now, I don't know if anybody will care. As far as I can tell, Republicans don't care at all about anything like this. And I don't know if he actually broke a law. But anyway, he certainly has been exposed to be lying about his corruption. As far as I can tell, especially ever since Trump, no amount of corruption matters at all in the Republican Party anymore. But anyway, it will be a fact that people knew if anybody thought he wasn't corrupt. So Netflix is trying to prevent people. Apparently there's a market where you can buy other people's Netflix accounts. Somehow they get them, they fish them, or they brute force them, and then they sell them. You can buy Netflix accounts, and then you can watch Netflix movies. So Netflix is going to make it so that if multiple users use the same account, they all have to live in the same house. And so it can be location sensitive. And of course, the first thing I saw, Hacks for Pancakes, a celebrity in the security community, posted, "Well, I travel a lot. So what if I go to a hotel somewhere and try to use my Netflix? It won't work anymore." And that might be a side effect. So they might not really want to do this. We'll see what happens. San Francisco has some free summer programming for San Francisco students. it's been about a year. San Francisco K through 12 students, in addition to the college students, have been unable to attend in person. And I was waiting for this. I would assume that when the virus goes down, they will have summer programs for those students to catch up. And apparently San Francisco does have some degree of that coming. So that's an option for people who want to send your kids to school in the summer. Another thing, I've watched so many people scream and yell and say the kids are missing out. They're going to be a whole year behind. It's going to ruin our society. And I realize I'm not an average person, but I found K through 12 to be completely worthless. I skipped 3 of the 12 grades. I had high school dropout. It was horrible. The classes taught you nothing. The math and science classes were useless. All the students got together in gangs and just beat me up, and the whole experience was completely worthless to me. Nothing I would have preferred better than to have them just shut the place and never open it again. I would do far better just reading books at home myself. And I think there are a lot of people where parents homeschool their kids and such. But anyway, apparently there is a large mass of people that actually feel that they benefit in some way from going through K through 12, and the parents are convinced that the kids are missing out on something. I didn't have that sensation at all. It was just like prison to me. So China promised that Hong Kong would have a separate but democratic system for 50 years, but it's only been about 26 years and they've finished crushing them. This is why they had all those protests in the street for the last year in Hong Kong, because they saw China doing this, and China has moved in, and they have now declared that no person can run for office without getting their patriotism tested and certified by the Chinese Communist Party. So basically you have to agree with their party or you cannot run for office. And previously they would do things like let them run an election, and then they would come and say, no, you can't have that person. You can vote for them, but if they win, you're not going to let them really take office. So, they're not very much on board with democracy. And, of course, neither are a lot of Americans on board with democracy. The whole Republican Party is pretty much dedicated to cutting down on people voting and indeed overriding votes. With Republican state Congress, like they plan to do in Nevada or Arizona, they'll just ignore the vote and appoint somebody else. So it's not like this is unique to China, but China is much more direct and brutal about it. They don't have any pretense to pretend to be a democracy. And Americans do have one party that actually wants a democracy, the National Democratic Party, but the other party seriously does not want a democracy. Anyway, yeah, it was brutal. Oh, it was totally brutal what they were doing in China, in Hong Kong. Anyway, so Bibi Netanyahu is in big trouble. He's very much like Donald Trump. He was investigated several times for fraud, and they say he's now imitating some stuff Trump did. He fully reopened everything, ignoring COVID. He is trying to, hold on to power. He overcome a lot of corruption investigations and so on. Anyway, it's not like the Donald Trump phenomenon in America is unique. Many other nations are doing the same thing. There's some kind of global response to the current situation. Anyway, so here we are at 125, and looks like the network is working, so we're in good shape here. So today I'm going to do the last section we didn't do before from Chapter 3 and the first little bit of Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is the Net Plus chapter. So if you've taken a Cisco class or a networking class, this is essentially review. Anyway, let me bring this stuff up. So the part we didn't get to was the physical security stuff, perimeter defenses. Things like fences. You can have a short fence that's just a deterrent. It doesn't really stop anybody. It just sort of reminds them that they shouldn't go over the fence. And they consider these 8-foot fences with barbed wire on top preventive, although a nimble person can climb over those too, but it's considered to be a preventive, and that a lot of people really can't get over that. Then you can have gates. There's ornamental gates, and then from class 1 all the way up to class 4, which are crash gates, which are really heavy, expensive, solid things that can stop a car. And bollards are these posts you see everywhere. They're extremely common. They're basically ubiquitous in America since 9/11 and since the bombing in someplace in the West, where the guy drove a whole dump truck full of fertilizer and blew up the building, Oklahoma City, I think. And after that, everyone got very concerned about people perhaps driving up the sidewalk and getting close to a building, so they put these bollards around any kind of government building or any building that might possibly be a target, so that you can't just drive a car up there. Lights, you rate how bright they are in lumens, and they can be detective in just that they make it easier for people to see who's trying to sneak in the building or something, and they can be deterrent, in that hopefully people give up. Now my stream here is stopping and claiming the video is not supported. So let me see. Students, please tell me in the chat, can you still see this? Because I got a feeling the Comcast might be cutting off on me again. Let me try to bring back a ping, because before I could tell from the slowness of pings when it was failing. And it's doing the same thing it did before. It slowed down a few times. All right, well, this might be acceptable. I will attempt to carry on. If it gets worse, it gets up to like 4 or 5 seconds, then this becomes useless. And I do have an alternative. I can take like a 100-foot cable and connect to a different network if I have to. So, okay, just let me know in the chat if you see a serious problem, and then I'll take a pause and run a cable up the stairs. As long as it's still working, I'll keep going. All right, the closed circuit television is where you just have a TV camera monitoring things. These were originally analog and hardwired, so they'd have a guard sitting someplace watching the TV. Now they're largely connected to the internet. Anyway, and of course the cameras come in all different sizes and different degrees of adjustment and such. Locks are the cheapest and most common security barrier, also very easy to overcome. My students all learned lock picking when I was teaching the pen testing, and I know Liz still teaches them that. It's extremely easy to pick these locks. There's maybe 5 pins, and there's only like 5 positions for each pin. You can just reach in with a piece of bent wire and pretty easily move the pins around until you get the right combination. You can take a photograph of the key and deduce it. It's really quite weak. You can pick them this way with a tension wrench and a single pick, moving the pins up one by one until they catch. You can also just make a bump key, where you take a key and you shave all of these down to the bottom position, and then you just tap it with a screwdriver, and it causes the pins to sort of jump randomly, and before too long they randomly hit the right position and the lock opens. So these kind of locks that cost like $10 at Home Depot are what you'd expect. They're a very minimal level of security, sort of like a username and password, which is the minimum. Without its two-factor authentication, that's the minimum level of security in a digital sense. All right. You can make a master key that will open all the locks in a zone. You can have keys where it's designed to have a certain master key that will open all the locks, and there's a core key to remove the lock core in a certain kind of lock. These combination locks here are also a very weak thing. There's some internal gears in here that don't even have that many positions, so there are not really 40 different positions here. And there's some algorithms where you can just pull the haft and notice where it catches and deduce what the combination is from the feel of it. Smart cards are a card that contains a computer chip, like most modern American credit cards. And so they put them in contact with something, or they're contactless, where they either make connection or you have a radio connection, and then it does something like answer a query with a cryptographic response. These are much superior to the old-fashioned credit cards because every transaction has a unique number that is not reused. The old ones, anybody that got your credit card number could keep making further charges against your account. And that's the Mag Stripe card, or just the ones with the letters embossed in the top where you roll a piece of carbon paper over them. Those just have a fixed number, and anybody with that number can keep charging from your account, which is why you're supposed to look at your bill and notice if there are extra charges. And then there's common access cards from the Department of Defense, which have a chip in them too, and amount to a very similar thing. You can tailgate someone if you follow them through a secure door, so they open the door and you go through without closing it. If you want to prevent this, you have to train your staff to not let people follow them. You can have a man trap. which is like an elevator, or you have a little room with two doors. One person has to get in, you have to close this door, and then use something like a fingerprint to open the second door. And there's a window there and a guard looking at you, so if the guard doesn't like what's happening, they just lock you in there and call the cops. That's why they call it a man trap. These turnstiles, like they have at the BART station, are intended to make it so only one person can go through at a time, but as you see there, they're pretty easy to jump over. And if you have these things, you have to have some way to let people out in case the building catches fire, which is often the weak spot. And Deviant Ollam, who is an expert in physical security and makes fun videos, showed one thing where I think he was like a black hat or something, and he came out of a bar and he just had a glass of whiskey, and he just took a sip of whiskey and spit it through the rubber gasket in a bank, and the doors came open. Because if you create some motion or even a temperature change inside the building, it will interpret that as a human trying to leave and open the doors. This is often a problem. The fact that you don't want to trap people in the building to die if it's on fire means that all you have to do is somehow trick that system into thinking there's a person in there and the door will open. And that's often a very sloppy thing like a blurry infrared motion sensor, which can be fooled. We did this on some buildings at the campus. They're usually not pretty easy to fool. All right, you can try to detect contraband like weapons. That's pretty easy if they're metal in the guns, but if they're sneaking in small things like SD cards or something, it's very hard to detect. So motion detectors, I mentioned, they can work like Doppler radar. They can send a beam across a space and notice when the beam is broken. They can pick up temperature changes with infrared. Any of these things can be used to detect if people are moving around and then either open the door to let them out or turn on a camera to record that motion. All right, there's these magnetic alarms. You've probably seen these windows with a metal strip around the window, like the metal strip on the back of your car to melt the ice off in cold states. And the point of that is it makes a connection, and when the door is open or the window is open, it detects that the window is open, and it can either set off an alarm or take some action in response to that. So your doors should not have hinges on the outside, or someone can take the pins out of the hinges and get in. And they can stick objects through the gaps to make it seem like there's motion inside, and that would open the door, like I say. Glass in windows is, of course, weak, so you can have bulletproof glass, or you can have glass with a wire mesh embedded, or special plastic Lexan windows that are much harder to break, the kind of thing you see in race cars. The standard office walls do not go all the way to the ceiling. They go all up to the ornamental ceiling, but they don't go all the way to the concrete slab above. And so you can just knock off the panels and climb over the wall. So you shouldn't have that kind of wall in a secure area. You got to have real solid walls that go all the way up to the solid part. A lot of interior materials used for interior walls are things like sheetrock or just plywood, and that's easy enough to cut through. So you have to consider the fire rating and also how easy it's going to be for someone to smash or cut through the wall. So guards are useful. You can have human guards protecting things, either the observe and report kind of guards or even armed guards. You have to make sure they know what their orders are. The most common situation is you tell them, don't get in a fight, don't try to stop anything, just report and call the real cops. And therefore the most common way to get through them is with social engineering. You convince them that you're authorized. One common technique is one guy told me the best thing you can do to get into a building is just have a mop and a bucket, and they will believe that you're a janitor and let you in. All right, so dogs are both deterrent and detective. They will bark and scare away people, and they'll act like alarms. The problem is sometimes they kill people and bite people, and then you might have lawsuits, so that's an issue, but they certainly scare people away. All right, you can have visitor badges, and if you do, you should make it so people can't save the visitor badge and reuse it on another day, have a different color each day or a time and date on the badge, so people know that you're a visitor, and they know to conceal secrets from you. DEF CON had a big scandal a few years ago. If you go to DEF CON and you're press, they issue you a special press badge, and there are people at DEF CON who are there anonymously and secret because their boss would fire them if they knew they were at DEF CON, or indeed they're a black hat hacker on the lam from the government, and they don't want to talk to reporters. So you have to wear the press badge so everybody can easily tell you're press and they know not to talk to you. And a press person went in there and took off the press badge and and they threw him out for impersonating a non-press person. Anyway, so you choose your building considering the hills, trees and such, how the crime in the neighborhood and how good the utilities are, and you consider whether you want to have it externally marked. You usually, unless your building is actually intending to have customers go into the building and buy something, you probably don't want to put the name of the company on the door or make it obvious what it is. You probably want it to just look like an anonymous industrial building so weird people won't wander in. And for something like a data center, if you're sharing by renting part of a building or part of a complex connected to other buildings, then of course their security may weaken yours. So that's an issue. Wiring closets should be physically secured. If someone can plug in unauthorized devices or unplug or turn off things, they can of course foul up your network or break in. There is a DMARC, is the term used by internet service providers and telco providers. It is the point where the external wires have entered your building, and the part from the DMARC out is the responsibility of the phone company, and the part from the DMARC in is your responsibility. So that's the game. Your server rooms especially have to have physical access control. If people can steal the servers or break them or install software on them or something, then they can really mess up your company. So the server rooms have to be not only controlled with environment, humidity and temperature, so to keep the servers running, they also have to make sure unauthorized people are not getting in there messing with the servers. All right, and you have to have media storage. You've got backup tapes and other such things, and you're going to have these things for backup or compliance, and these things will have to be protected from unauthorized access. All right, so in a defense in depth, you've got physical access. Now, if an attacker manages to penetrate through your defenses, like guards and locked doors and such, then they might get to physical access to your device. So now you want to have serial numbers to identify devices so you know which device should be plugged in where, computers and such. And there are port controls. Cisco has port security where you know which particular network card is plugged in which port, and you can't plug in something else. It will notice that and deny it access. And of course, there's environmental controls. If the electricity goes out, this is of course very bad for computer systems, and there's a variety of failures that are common in the commercial electrical net, so you typically don't take expensive servers and plug them straight in the wall. You have a surge protector to stop spikes. You have an uninterruptible power supply to give it a few minutes of power so it can shut down cleanly if the mains go down, or you just have generators, which you spin up, and then of course you got power for as long as you can keep the generator running. If you're doing something like having a hospital or a serious data center that really has to stay up through an emergency. Your wires leak radio signals, and the other wires pick up the radio signals, so some of the signal sent through one wire leaks into the other wire and causes some bit errors. So that's crosstalk. Unshielded twisted pair is the most susceptible. It's the cheapest and most flexible wire, but it's not very protected from crosstalk. So you can, if you have a problem, too many wires too close together so they're interfering with each other, then you can go to shielded twisted pair to get some protection, or coaxial cable, like cable TV, that's even better. And the most extreme solution is fiber optics. Fiber optics sends pulses of light through glass to send the data, and radio signals do not interfere with it at all. But it's more expensive. The cable is about the same price, but the devices at the end to send and receive the light are much more expensive. You have to have, if you don't want air and water building up in the building, then you keep positive pressure. You have a higher air pressure inside so that the air is going out, carrying out dust and such. You're supposed to keep the humidity near 50% and the temperature around 70 degrees in the data center, although Google tested this and decided it was okay to move their data center up to something like 90 degrees and save power and heating, venting, cooling. So, but most people, the general rule is that you keep your data center cooler than that. Static electricity is bad. If the humidity is low, then you'll get static electricity, and that can, of course, cause components to get broken. And if your humidity is too high, then you get metal corrosion that fouls up the components. That's why you want to hit that 50% level. Dust is bad, builds up in your computers and causes overheating, blocks the fans and so on, so you want to keep it clean in the server room. And you want to have heat detectors. These are just thermometers, or smoke detectors, or flame detectors to detect when things are on fire. And when you do detect them, then you inform the people so they can evacuate. You have fire drills and evacuation routes and a plan for if the elevators can't be used, and you shouldn't be using them when the building's on fire because they might take you to the floor that's on fire, and you have to have some way to handle the handicapped people. So typical personnel safety. And you can have warnings for other things that might go wrong in your building depending on what you're doing. City College has a good, hilarious one of these. If you ever get back to campus, you'll hear it. They turn it on, I think, every Friday, and it says, if this is the world, it mumbles like that. I can never understand a word of it. But anyway, we've got one. So there's fire extinguishers. A is just water to put out wood and paper. B is flammable liquids. Like C is the one that matters most to us. That's electrical equipment, like computers. D is combustible metals, which is pretty exotic, and K is for cooking oil. So for us, the most important things to know are A and C. A is just plain water to stop the house from burning down, and C is the stuff to stop an electrical fire. So these all do one of these things to make the fire stop. And Tuesday at 12 p.m., I see. No idea what that is. Anyway, all right, so we talked about this. That's CO2 is one chemical you can use to put out fire, but the problem is people will die in that room, so you have to be careful with that. Halon is a chemical, a gas emitted to put out fires, which will stop the fire and still leave enough oxygen without killing the people, but the problem is it's bad for the ozone, so there are now better chemicals recommended. And you can have a timer warn people before this happens. Oh, the alarm is Tuesday at 12 p.m. I know there's when the siren goes off in San Francisco, yeah. But I don't know about the one on city campus. It might be the same. Good point. Anyway, all right. So you have a warning to people before you deploy these things so they know it's going to happen. And then there's sprinklers to release water. Wet pipes just have pipes full of water over your head. So when the heat opens the head, the water will flow. A dry pipe doesn't have water until it needs to. Deluge has a large flow of water, and pre-action has 2 triggers to prevent accidental discharge. All right, so I got a few cahoots about that, and I should have them ready. I do, right over here. All right, 3I. There it is. All right. I saw that the delay got up to like 5 seconds there. But I see some comments suggesting that at least some of you can still see it. Guess I'll keep going. Why has this got no sound? Oh, I didn't start there yet. That's why. Well, that's good. This tells me at least some people can still connect and see it. All right, good. I went to the Comcast page and it showed like 7 or 8 major service interruptions in San Francisco that never seemed to get any better. So I think Comcast is having some serious trouble in San Francisco. But mine got a little better. All right, I guess this is it. Okay, so which one is a deterrent? All right, nobody had enough time to answer. Okay, the delay is so extreme, I'm going to need to extend the time. Let me just do that. I think we can still use them, but I'll have to increase the time. I will go back to here and edit the 3i. Looks to me like I need to give you about 50 seconds. Yes, no, I can see the delay is very extreme today. It was, the delay is about 30 seconds, and usually it's been about, wonder if I can make, I can't change it. Yeah, it might be too slow to do these cahoots under these conditions. I'll try it. We'll see how this goes. I have to move it up to 1 minute. We'll see. All right. Viewers can try refreshing. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to skip the first one. You've already seen it. And we'll see how bad it is running them this slowly. I may have to omit cahoots today if this is too clumsy. All right. I'm going to skip the first one if I can. Yes, I can. Okay, good. So let's do the next one. All right. So if you shave your key down to the lowest position, what have you got? All right, that's it, a bump key. All right, and a smart card. Okay, that's ICC is what they call it. All right. And which fire extinguisher is water? Okay, that's type A, good. All right, and what prevents EMI? All right. The last one didn't seem to have as long as it should have there, but oh good, we got a lot of answers. All right. All right. A little clumsy, but anyway. VoIP. And Roman. All right. I think VoIP has told me who they are before. I might be able to figure out who that is. All right, well, let's go back to the slides anyway, and I don't know if we should do more cahoots or not. Anyway, at least it's working well enough to do the slides. Oh, I'm going to stop this recording and start another one.